there was some extra structure my students needed in breakout rooms to be sure that they actually spoke, and actually spoke in the target language, and actually spoke in the target language on topic. I mean, you know me. I'm all about the low prep, 100% target language stuff, so I can't wait to share it with you. I'm going to share my screen and you're going to see exactly how I do it. Okay, so you might be familiar with rotations or speed dating exercises, but I've realized that you don't actually have to create 50 activities for the students to actually do. You can just give them some conversation starters and some conversation questions. So usually I like to revolve it around a theme, but I've found that if it just talks about the topic that they did for homework or that they, worked with for homework, that it can get kind of boring. So I recommend that the first question that you run is just a warm-up question. I always start by having my students, chit-chat in the target language together. I love to hear how they're feeling today, what they did last weekend, and that's a really, really easy way to make sure that your language conversations are student-centered. Anyway, so that's what you see here is in this first question, this first rotation, I ask them, how are you feeling today and why? What has happened in your life recently that you want to share? And of course, what did you do during the weekend? And of course, they had a snow day. So I said, what'd you do during the snow day? The super easy way to make this work is have your students make a copy of the slideshow, their own copy of it right before the activity starts. And then as they work through the rotations, have them jot down notes about what they said and what their partner said. And if you want to do in larger groups, you can. But I find that partners is really fantastic because they have a small enough group to actually, feel invested in the conversation. If there's just two people, it's pretty awkward for one person to not say anything, So on Zoom, what you can do is you can make these groups magically, randomly, have them start and tell them roughly how many minutes that they're going to have in each room if you want. And I just randomly generate the groups using the automatically assigned feature of Zoom breakout rooms. You know how many students you have? Divide that by 2. Say that's how many rooms you want and have them randomly generated. Then use the broadcast feature and let them know at a 5-minute warning in the target language, say there's 5 minutes left in this rotation. Hay 5 minutos más en la primera rotación o la segunda rotación to kind of help them keep track of which rotation that they're in case they get lost. I recommend that you send that broadcast message twice in a row. Send it once, count to 20, hit broadcast again. And copy and paste the same message, because sometimes the broadcast message, it appears in blue on their side. If they're deep in conversation, they might miss it, notice it late, not have a chance to read and comprehend it. So I recommend you send it twice. So I give them that 5-minute warning, and then I don't give them any warning when I move them. They figure out that they're changing because someone gets moved. Hit recreate in that Zoom breakout rooms window, and then they'll just automatically generate a whole new list of pairings for you. Hit go. And then once I can see that everyone has joined their new breakout room, that's when I send another broadcast message and I say, okay, start la tercera rotación, start the third rotation or whatever. I've done this a couple times, but let me give you some example of the kinds of questions my students have really liked. After, the warm-up question, talking about themselves, making some connections, especially if in virtual school, the social connection piece is really important. And if I can support that in the target language, that's amazing. The next question I've got here is asking if they think that virtual school should in fact offer snow days, vacation days when it snows, and why they think that way. That's a topic that I know the students care about, is super relevant to their real lives because they just had a snow day in virtual school. And then I ask them to think further because I can kind of guess what they're gonna say. I asked them to consider who might have a different perspective than they do, and how might you convince them to see it differently, or at least why do you think they have that opinion? So you can see I'm taking things that are relevant to their life and that I know they will really care about, and this is the candy coating of getting them to speak in pairs in the target language. A big thing I recommend if you're trying to get your students to speak more in discussion, even if you're not even there in a breakout room, is leverage whatever they've prepared for homework, what they've written about, and bring that topic into the discussion, because a lot of students, they are much more likely to speak up if they feel like they've already kind of worked out some thoughts on paper. So maybe not ask the exact same question that they wrote about for homework, but a related question so that they've already had some time to kind of premeditate on the topic. So for us, we've been exploring, we're doing a project around making a dictionary for emojis for one of our students who doesn't know how to use emojis. So like we're exploring if emojis and emotes on Twitch should be considered a language in and of themselves, and if they can help you communicate in other languages as well. So in this conversation, in this rotation, we're just kind of pulling in some vocab that we learned from reading an article last class and that we reflected on in homework. Finally, asking them to think a little bit more deeply or critically about the material, right? We've talked about ourselves, we talked about our opinions related to our own lives, we've talked a little bit about what we've read recently. Now we're talking about more than just content. We're talking about, some more philosophical ideas. And that's a progression of a discussion I strongly recommend you use in these rotations, because students need time to warm up, get into Spanish mode, some easier questions, then questions they're prepared to answer, now this unfamiliar question. And in this case, it was, in which context do you think that emojis are a universal language? Why do you feel that way? And then in which situations is this like emoji thing not a universal language, and why do you feel that way? Finally, I tell them at the end to upload a copy of this presentation to Google Classroom, because remember that they've taken some accountability for actually having these conversations, because in the slides they have to write what they said and what their partner said. And I think that helps all sorts of things: active listening, ensuring that both students are participating somewhat equally, and ensuring that all students are participating at all. This is the kind of accountability or the kind of structure that I recommend you do, so that you don't feel like you need to be in every single breakout room at every single moment to be sure that students are on task. When they know that they have to upload something to your LMS after the end of the activity, that's some built-in structure to be sure that they stay on task like you want them to. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, I know that you're going to enjoy my entire playlist about staying in the target language while you teach. I've got some videos about staying in the target language virtually. There's one right here. Staying in the target language while you're in person, right here. And if you are teaching from home, I think that you probably need to watch this video as well. This is all about keeping your sanity and your work-life balance while you teach from home. My name is Maria Jernigan. I hope that you subscribe, because I'm going to come out with another video next Monday. See you then. Adios.